So, welcome to this latest video in a series of interviews in which I interview those who have recovered from postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, or POTS, by following brain rewiring programs. And I'm joined today by Michelle from Florida. Michelle, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor. Thank you.
So, Michelle, please take us back to the start of your story, and in particular, tell us a bit about your life before POTS, and then we'll turn to what led to the triggers and build up to the illness.
Okay, so I've always been into health since I was really little. I grew up in a denomination that was like vegan and vegetarian. It's a Christian denomination, and Seventh-day Adventist. So I kind of knew about health from like really young. So I was always pretty healthy. I knew how to use herbs. I knew how to get better without doctors. I have a background in kind of, the herbs and stuff like that, natural healing and preventative health. So whenever I did get sick, I always knew it was like from too much sugar or not eating, healthy, So having that background, I've always been able to sort of help myself. Not saying that I didn't party or live, like a normal American, because I definitely did. But I always knew how to, balance it out or whatever. So as I got older, I always wanted to be kind of healthy, and I would work out, and I always could work out, swim, run, do everything. And then, yeah, so I was running and swimming. I taught music. I traveled all over the U.S., to do music, and, really enjoyed writing, and I could burn the candle at both ends with no problem. Yeah, so I think like everything was pretty normal as far as like physical stuff. The only thing I ever really had prior coming in was I had a little bit of kind of, the thing from typing or playing the instruments, which is like a little bit of like carpal tunnel type symptoms. Yes. And that started to become more like a neuralgia, and it kind of went into like my arm and kind of came up. That was before POTS. So that was like the only thing other than migraines. I did have migraines. Was the only thing that I ever really had before I actually, had POTS, like specifically. I mean, things did morph over time, and we can get into that a little bit. But pretty much before, I could eat what I want. I could, do what I wanted. I didn't feel held back by anything. And, life was fairly as normal as it, normal, as it can be.
Right, yes. And so take us then now to when things started to become not so normal, and what was the first things that triggered that, or how that sort of played out?
So when it's really interesting, and I'm going to try to answer just that simple question. Looking back now, I can see things that were probably a part of it that I missed. But I would say the first thing that started happening was I started getting the pain in my body, and I noticed something going on with my joints. This was devastating because I was a musician. I was studying in, college and stuff, and I started having problems with my bones and my hands. I noticed some collapsing in my thumbs, and I was concerned. I wasn't able to do my scales without there being pain in my hand. So I did a lot of, studying with that. Like I read books, and I did stretching. I did 6 months of physical therapy, and I was diagnosed with multiple nerve entrapments. And I thought, well, it's probably just from banging rock and roll piano, playing too much or whatever, and playing incorrectly, even though I was trying to study classical and all that. But so I noticed that. And that was like kind of hard for me because music was my passion, and it limited my classical training. And I really love classical music. So that was a sock in the stomach. Yes. So, but rock was easy. I played a lot of easy music, easier music, chording and, stuff like that, arpeggios and stuff. So I could get around it, and I would stretch and stuff. And so it was like up in the air whether I had thoracic outlet syndrome. I was never diagnosed with it. But the physical therapist was like, you definitely have thoracic outlet. But the doctor was like, no, you don't. He's like, you have multiple nerve entrapments. You know, that's it. Take this, you know, whatever. Like, I think it was like ibuprofen and go see a physical therapist. So I did that. That did not help. I did some stretching, read a book that was really good about technique and stuff. And Chinese stretches on the internet help a lot. And that was just, I kind of just balanced that out. Then it kind of went into my shoulder, and then it was like getting shocks into my neck. So I was kind of dealing with like a type of neuralgia or something. I still don't know to this day exactly what it was, but I know that it was real because it would shock me like a lot. And I did have a car accident when I was 19.
Okay.
So that could have definitely, you know, done some damage that I didn't know about in my neck. I don't know. And then after that, I noticed that I started getting sensitive to gluten. I wasn't sensitive as a kid to gluten at all because as a vegetarian and vegan, we had like that veggie meat all over the house, you know? And so I was never sensitive as a kid, but now I was becoming sensitive to gluten. And I'd get migraines like from after I would eat it. And I'd be like, I'd rather eat a pig than eat this. There's no way I can ever eat this. Like, it's just not good for me. Yeah. And so I noticed like that was the first sensitivity that I noticed, like a food sensitivity. And then just the chronic shooting pains in my neck, and I would have to get a lot of massage, and I did acupuncture, and I did chiropractics for my headaches and stuff, and everything did help for a time. It would work for a while. Like it was, you know, I can't say anything bad about it, but it didn't heal the thing that was underneath. And it would work for like 30 days, and then I would have to go back to the chiropractor and get adjusted, or, you know, I would try to do like, you know, acupuncture, and it seemed like, I could lift my shoulder a little higher. Can I, or is that in my head, you know? So I just, from there, I just, you know, forgot about stuff. I started to try to be really strict with my diet, and I just noticed that it was worse when I would do that. And the more natural I ate, the worse it seemed that I would become, and that messed with my brain a lot. And so I just kind of got frustrated. I was like, I'm going to clean my body, and I'm going to get rid of this arthritis or whatever it is that I have. I did see a doctor. He said I have a little bit of arthritis in my neck, just a little bit. He's like, you know, you're getting older or whatever. I was like 38 at the time, and I was like, 38 with arthritis in the neck? No. I was like, that's too young. He's like, well, you know. and that was the only, you know, thing, you know, medically, like, okay, you have a little arthritis and you have multiple nerve entrapments. And then I did like an MRI on my wrist, and I had like a little ganglion cyst or something, you know, and I didn't want to take anything out because of how they do it. And I play the piano and all that. Yeah. So that kind of like would come and go, you know, and I dealt with it. I tiptoed around it. I kind of gave up with the foods because when I would juice, like the stuff that's supposed to be for your joints, like burdock root and stuff, I just would have the worst cramps in my hands. Mm-hmm. I didn't know anything about oxalates or any of that stuff till way later. And I didn't know what was going on. And I read a lot, so that was very frustrating. Mm. Then came, you know, the stress in my life and the business. You know, 2008, we lost our house. We couldn't find work, and it was extremely stressful. I would say that was a very stressful time. And some other things, you know, that were going on in the family, not with my husband and I, but just, you know, family members on both sides, caused a lot of stress. And then we ended up starting a business. I started a business, and then my husband ended up being able to come and work, you know, for me and work together. And we started our business, and we struggled. We had nothing. So we literally started from nothing. Mm-hmm. And we kind of like lost all our friends in the process. So it was very, very dramatic. Yes. And in our church, we fell out with, you know, our church just nothing was like fitting into place, you know, and it was stressful because that was like my family, you know, my surrogate family was my church, and then that wasn't working out. And then the economy wasn't working out, and my music wasn't working out. And it was just, you know, losing your house that you bought wasn't working out. But then, like I said, we started the business, and it was really fun. And I'm a very like laid back person. being from like California, so I just went with it as much as I could,
Yeah.
and I have faith. I believe in God and all that. And I felt very close to God or whatever. And I felt like God was with me, and it was very peaceful. But at the same time, sometimes it's like anything, it's hard to focus on that when you have so much going on around you. What you see can be overwhelming.
Yes.
So we started our company. That was great. And then it was very stressful, though. I remember that because I was saying goodbye to my music, kind of, and, starting a serious business that required a lot of me, a lot more than I realized. And then I just had the eating stuff. I was trying to figure out these pains. I remember like Facebooking about that. And then I just was like, I'm just going to not worry about it. And when I stopped worrying about the food, it sort of kind of got better a little bit. Like it was almost like, forget it, I give up. And my brain was like, good, but I was always sensitive to like caffeine and gluten. Like I couldn't do artisan breads or anything. And I could do sprouted wheat bread for some reason. I don't know why. And so I would just kind of stay away from that if I wanted to sing, because when I would sing, my high notes would go away with like gluten or bread or certain foods, if it was like any kind of overly cooked oils or something, I don't know exactly what, but I could only eat really clean before I sang, or I would have like my high notes wouldn't be there, which to me is inflammation, or my hands would hurt a little bit. So then after we moved, we had a really great business that was growing. I moved into a warehouse. It was a lot of fun. It was exciting. And there was still some family, stuff going on, but it weighed on me. It was definitely, I needed to get counseling. I had to have like help dealing with it. And I did, and that was helpful, very helpful. And but still, my heart was aching. There was heartache there.
Yes.
And then, like, my cat of 15 years got sick, and he had cancer and chemo, and it sounds weird to say chemo, and it's not the subject of this video, but he did really well, and it was really inspiring to see that it isn't the same thing that a human goes through. It's like very mild. They do a very low dose, and he just came back to life. And I was so grateful to have that time because I knew I needed to say goodbye slower,
Yes.
So he passed finally. I lost a lot of sleep. I was singing kind of in a more professional way in a bigger church that's kind of a rock and roll church, and like, you kind of go that direction when you're going to make an album or, do something like that. And nobody understood, especially the lead pastor didn't really understand what I was going through with the cat,
Yes.
Didn't understand the how much that cat meant to me,
Yeah.
He's kind of special. Like everyone that met this cat was like, the cat's not a cat, he's like a dog. I know, he's so cool, Butterball, the orange fluffy little, he was so sweet. You just look at him and he would purr. He was such a sweet cat.
Yeah.
And so it was hard on me. I had to pill him, and it took a lot out of me. I didn't get sleep for probably a good couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if he would just, cough or do anything, I was on hypervigilance, I was like a mom, it was just that natural instinct of like, and that was sucked, being on that, but I couldn't help it because I just adored him,
Yes.
And so finally he passed, I had to take him to get him to put to sleep. That was traumatic. And then I dealt with that, and then still dealing with like little weird family stuff. And then, like psychologically. And then we moved our warehouse. And when we moved our warehouse a couple of doors down, we did a build out. And in the build out, it was a lot of construction, a lot of walls, a lot of floors, a lot of painting, whatever goes into that. We had to put up walls, break down walls, that whole thing. And it ended up that there were 20 leaks in the ceiling. And when there were 20 leaks in the ceiling, it put a lot of stress on us because we had to move in. because the other people were moving into our unit. And so that was stressful, dealing with that, another stress.
Yeah.
And then my second cat passed away of 17 years.
Yes.
So that was very hard because I had to like watch her seize. She had like a seizure, and then I had to take her and put her to sleep. So it was really tough. And I'm very soft when it comes to animals. Yeah. So when that happened, 1 week later, sorry, the Sunday after she passed, I had my heart started making like bumps in my chest, like a lot. And I had never really felt that that often. When my first cat passed and I was up a lot and I didn't sleep, I did notice some kind of like uncomfortable feeling in my chest, and I just had to sleep. And I would notice it would happen when I would get really tired. So I would always, tell my husband, I need to sleep. Like, I have to go to sleep now. That started happening with the first cat when I had to deal with all of that. When the second cat passed, that next Sunday after she passed, 1 week later, I started having an anxiety attack, and then I started having a panic attack, but it wasn't because I was having panic. It's because my heart was racing and I got scared that I was having a heart attack. Yes. So I didn't know what was going on. I thought I was maybe going to die. I didn't know. And it's not funny. It's just, I'm really glad I didn't die, and it sounds funny, but it was really not funny. And my husband watched me. It was embarrassing. I felt confused. I didn't know what was happening. And this kept happening over and over, where I would just be sitting still, and all of a sudden my heart would just start racing. And that was basically the start of panic attacks. And I had a few of them that, it was like I would, I was like hyperventilating, and I was like, I just need fresh air. I don't know what's going on, and don't talk to me, and I was just like waiting to see what would happen. I guess I was fearing death is what was happening. I definitely was afraid of that because of the heart. I was like, what happens after this? This is like a main, a main part of you, your heart and your brain, like, wow, So I said, I have to find out what's wrong with me. I need to go get a blood test. And I didn't know where to go because I don't really go to doctors too much. So, and plus we had moved north from Miami. We were in this new place. So I didn't know any doctors up here. So I just went to a close family doctor, a close to the area family practitioner. And he was really, really nice. And he just told him what happened. And he told me, you're just having anxiety. It just sounds like anxiety. And that was that, Yes. I felt like that wasn't right. Like, I was like, okay, it made sense. I mean, the cat, I wasn't, an idiot. I knew that she passed and it was a big deal, but this was just so strange to me. And so he put me on medication. He told me I needed to take I hadn't slept for 4 days, and I wasn't sleeping. I don't know how many days it was. I think that was later. I wasn't sleeping, and that just kept happening. And so I would kind of like, I didn't want to go to the doctor and get needled. So I would kind of put it off, but the panic attacks kept happening because the heart rate kept zinging, revving up, And so I realized, listen, you have to be a big girl, and you can't do that. You have a husband. You have to think about your job and, what you do, and you provide for him too. Like, it's part of his life. You can't just be like, I'm not going to the doctor. So I went. And first he just put me on the medication. I was kind of grateful for the medication, even though I'm very anti-medication. The pill was so tiny, yes. Patrick, the pill was so tiny, and it was the lowest dose of a benzodiazepine called Klonopin or clonazepam. I think that's the generic name of Klonopin. I took the generic. And it was so tiny. This pill was like just so tiny. I was like, God, it's so little, you know? And I had taken something a long time ago, the lowest dose of something before my MRI, because I kind of have claustrophobia, and I had to go into the MRI like all the way to see my shoulder,
Yeah.
and or my hand or something, whatever. And so I was like, okay, I took I think once like a Xanax or something, and I was okay, you know, it was all right, you know, took the edge off or whatever. And so when I took the pill, I was relieved because I was like, oh, I don't have like, I don't care. Like it just makes you not care, you know? And I was like, well, I can like use the sleep, and it made me sleep finally, you know? And so I was like, wow, you know, okay, you know, I'll just do this for a little bit. And so I took the medication, and then I was going to get the blood work, and I got the blood work, and everything came back normal. And I had even gotten a blood test a couple of years prior because I thought I had the arthritis, and that came back normal. And I was like, I can't believe I don't have arthritis. I thought for sure I would have arthritis with all the pain I had in my fingers and everything, you know? So I had forgot to tell you that. But that was also, and that I have medical records for all of that. And so I basically was still like, really anxiety? Like, wow, I have anxiety. So I bought a book on anxiety, and I was like, let me try to get through my anxiety, you know? And then I noticed, okay, so then 2 weeks after taking the medication, he told me, you know, just take it. Everything is fine. So I just took a quarter of it when I would take it. I never took like the whole pill.
Yes.
And then I took half of the pill when things would get kind of bad, like if I started to feel like overwhelmed. And so then I noticed after 2 weeks, I started getting blurred vision. And I was like driving one day, and I just remember like I was driving, and I remember like looking up and looking down, and it was almost like my eyes went and I was like, whoa. I was like, and I was going through an intersection, a busy intersection, and I was like, yeah, I was like, I'm a tough cookie because I've been on my own since I've been 16, but that's scary. That was very scary. So I was like, wow, what's going on, you know?
Yeah.
I think I kind of half put it like, is this the medication or is this just me? You know, like maybe I have a, you know, disease, you know? And then I spoke to my doctor, and I told him, you know, I was still having the heart stuff. And he said, well, he had told me if you get breakthrough beats that are making you uncomfortable, after 2 weeks, he said, then you can make an appointment with the cardiologist, because I was pushing for the cardiologist because I wanted to know. And I said, okay, fair enough. So I did. And then I told him I'm still getting breakthrough beat. He's like, okay, then let's make it a cardiologist. So I went to the cardiologist. I wore the Holter monitor. I was so grateful to be like looked at and my heart looked at, just to put my mind at ease. And I thought they were going to come back with something. I really did. And the only thing they came back with, I wore the Holter monitor for 24 hours. And I went back, and they did an echocardiogram and, you know, all of that. And he said, I think you just have anxiety, you know? And I was just like, God, there's this stupid anxiety word again, you know? And because to me, anxiety is like mental, you know? And I couldn't deny that I was under duress, you know? But at the same time, I guess I didn't know that anything could cause physical. And I was like, that sounds more like like an ailment to me. Like, you know, it's not just a talk therapy kind of thing, because I had done that, you know?
Yeah. And if I may just say something on that, in that if I look back to my own experience with POTS, you know, I'm someone who's experienced anxiety and who's experienced POTS. And POTS, you know, although it's using, you know, the limbic system is involved in both anxiety and in POTS, it seemed to me that what was going on in POTS was much deeper, much more primitive, much more like...
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, it's really deep. And you can actually be quite calm rationally when it's all happening.
Yeah, and that's how I was.
Yeah.
Here, you said it. You said it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is that everyone knew me as being so strong. You know, everybody used to say that to me, and sometimes I would just be like, yeah, I'm not that strong. You know, they're like, you're so strong. I know you're going to do the right thing. I'm like, oh my God, I just need some help right now. But so, yeah. So yes, you said something that is very viscerally true. Yeah. Absolutely. You can be very calm and rational and think, and yet there's a lot of stuff going on. So he told me he wanted me to take the medication for a month. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I didn't know. I felt like, I remember the red flag of like, And then, but back to the cardiologist, just to kick off from there. I got my results back from the echocardiogram. I got my results back from the Holter monitor. In the meantime, I was kind of being treated as an anxiety, like you're going to just try it for a month kind of thing then, you know, while you're getting all your echocardiogram, you know, just stay on the medication. And I was like, all right. I mean, I hate going to the doctor, so I would take like a quarter one before so they could deal with me, because I would cry before I got my blood test. I was just, I hate needles and doctors, and, you know, I just don't like that. And, but I dealt with it, and I went and did what I needed to do. So I got back the results, and the cardiologist didn't like the fact that I was on benzo. He's like, I really don't like that stuff. Mm-hmm. And I told him, I think some of the side effects, and he's like, yeah. He's like, I don't like that you're on that. He's like, you should just, you know, my mom's on Prozac, you know, just get on that or something. And I was like, Prozac? I'm like, that is definitely not something I want to be on. I was like, no. We want to go the other way. Yes. You know, I'll eat a banana or something, you know, but I don't want to take Prozac. Right. Nothing wrong with anyone that's taking it, but just that was so opposite of like how I grew up and what I learned, and, you know. Yeah. And plus I knew people that had been on it that had horrible stories about it, you know, of what it did to them. Yes. So, one day, the diagnosis from the cardiologist was I had PVCs and PACs, and I had a slight mitral valve prolapse, so tiny, he said, you don't even need medication. He's like, trust me, nothing. Okay. And then he said, and you have a benign heart murmur. And I was like, I never knew any of this. So it made me sad, because I didn't know, you know, what that meant. Does that mean it's the beginning of something? You know, I didn't know. And so I was still sad. I was like, you know, my mind, you know, it was kind of dramatic, you know, like I'm dying. And then he was just like, you know, you should just, you just have anxiety and no big deal. And I asked him, could this be perimenopause? And both of the doctors said, yeah, you know, it could be. So I was like, you know, it could be hormones, could be so many different things. Mm-hmm. And that's what I thought it was, you know, because I couldn't accept all the other stuff. And so I was normal, you know, everything is fine. You know, and then he told me, if it really bothers you, the cardiologist, if it really bothers you, go on beta blockers. Mm-hmm. Well, I already knew about beta blockers, or I studied it after he said it. I probably studied it after he said it. I went home and I was like, told my husband and my dad and like different people, and, you know, that sounds like heart stuff, you know, like I feel like I'm too young for that. Mm-hmm. And even though I am 46, but I feel young. Like I don't feel like a normal 46-year-old. And so when I researched the beta blocker, it makes people that have low blood pressure have really low blood pressure. Well, I already have really low blood pressure. And I knew that because when I would get up, I would have those blackout. I didn't faint, but I'd have the blackout, you know, the head rush. Right. I had had that for years. I just thought that was normal. Mm. I didn't even know. That was back like, you know, when in like 2013, like in those areas, like I had that for a long time, you know. When we lost the house, even in 2008, actually, you know, I had those blackouts when I would get up too quick. Yeah. So I didn't think anything of it. That didn't sound too serious, but I knew that if you have low blood pressure, you don't want to be on beta blockers, or you're going to have, it could be worse, you know? Yeah. That's what happens when you read like we do, right? So, and it's true. So I didn't want to do that. And I was like, no. And he's like, but you don't need it. He's like, it's only if the PACs really bother you. And I was like, yeah, I'm going the other way. I was like, I don't like the medication I'm on. I'm definitely not getting on another medication. No, that's like American. No. And no. So then after I started having, I was sitting down one day stretching after a run or a workout or whatever.
Yes.
And I was actually right there. And I was on the floor on a yoga mat. And I was massaging my hips because my hips were really tight and kind of in pain from working out.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I got this like burst of like pain that went up to the side of my brain right here. And it was like this hot, like pounding, strange pain that really like knocked me out. I had to like lean. I was sitting, but I had to lean against the wall. I was like, whoa. I was just like experiencing this whole like flash of brain pain in my head. And I was just like waiting for it to pass. And I was just like, whoa. And I was like, that at that point I was like, medication bad. I was like, get off. And so that's when I started doing research in benzos. I went on the benzo forum. I started talking to people, started learning, and that these were all, very bad side effects from the medication. And I weaned myself the second month by myself, and I knew you couldn't go fast because you could have a seizure and die.
Yes.
And I was like kind of pissed off, kind of upset that I had gotten on a medication that you weren't supposed to be on for more than 2 weeks, and you are not supposed to take every day. And I was instructed to take it every day for a month.
Right. And it's
the withdrawal.
It's worth saying, Michelle, if I just may, at that point, it's worth saying that,
yes.
that obviously these drugs have withdrawals and so on that can be difficult at the best of times. But of course, if you're someone who has POTS and they have a limbic system impairment, they tend to be even more sensitive to medication than other people would be. So you have that added factor there. So there's the withdrawals, and then there's the double effect of that when you're on medication and your brain is struggling with dealing with a lot of things. If I think back briefly to when I had POTS, and initially it was thought that I had some kind of virus, and I was put on these antibiotics. That the room ended up spinning, and it was a
Me too.
Right. It was traumatic from that, and of course.
It was.
Of course, a antibiotic, it shouldn't cause that, and it did. So you have the double whammy of the brain in crisis responding to difficult drugs.
I heard your story. I heard that story so many times. People from taking antibiotics were petrified after getting off of benzos. It's like the thing you never do, is it'll wreck you.
Yes.
And well, I got off because I was having my clonic seizures.
Okay.
And the medication was making me have cramping so bad in my feet at night, which I never had in my whole life ever, because I had hit what's called tolerance. So what I found out after 2 weeks of being on the medication was that I needed more, not because I wanted more at all, and not because you need it to work better even. It was because your body adjusts in such a way that if you don't take more, you start going into withdrawal.
Right.
So that's what was happening to me. I think I probably hit it within the first 5 days of taking the medication.
Yes.
And that would make sense because I have done other recreational drugs when I was young, so maybe my resistance, or who knows, but So it wasn't uncommon after I had spoken to people in the forum and joined Facebook groups because I was having a lot of issues with the side effects. And so I even found out about the doctor that's an expertise, Julie or something like that in Europe. She helps people get off of benzos the right way. And I knew you had to go slow, but what happened is that if I didn't get, I was like, damned if you do, damned if you don't, because I couldn't eat. It would hurt my stomach. I had all these bubbles in my stomach when I'd go to sleep. I'd have to push my hands into my belly in order to get the bubbles to move just so I could sleep. And they were like very painful. So I would literally fall asleep with my hands in my stomach on my stomach. I mean, it was like I was just dealing. Yeah. And I felt very isolated. I felt like my husband, there's no way he could understand because, it just was unbelievable. And so once I got off the medication, it was really hell. Like that's when the hell really began.
Yes.
And I would not wish that on my worst enemy. I really wouldn't. Like it was hell. That's hell. That's a living hell. Yes. And so for 4.5 months, I went through a living hell. Blurred vision. I couldn't see. My ears were ringing. I had a nonstop vice grip headache from hell. And that's coming from a person that suffered from migraines. It was worse than that. It was like worse than that. It was like sinus plus migraine plus blur vision plus not feeling right. I mean, I didn't even feel like myself. I couldn't even feel like Michelle. I didn't know who I was. I just felt like, and, I was really listening to like Joel Osteen, who's very positive. I really like him a lot. And, I read like Anthony Robbins, and I know how to have a positive mindset. And so I just started running. And I ran my ass off. And I am not kidding you. I mean, I ran and I ran and I ran. And I put on my running shoes. And I mean, I ran 4 miles every day. And every time I ran, the headaches were gone. Okay. And I could breathe. And I was like, oh, this is what it feels like to be normal again. I was like, the headaches are gone when I would run. So I feel that my withdrawal from the benzodiazepine was hell, but I think I went through it a little faster because I did exercise. Okay. Whereas a lot of people just get knocked out and they can't, and they just succumb to the bed and how they feel. I fought through that. Okay. And for as long as I could. Yes. And
can I ask you, Michelle, about the myoclonic seizures, just briefly on those? Can you explain what those are for people and describe what they're like? Because I think they might be quite a common experience for POTS patients.
Oh, well, it's definitely common for people that withdraw from medication, and I didn't know that that was common for POTS patients. Yeah. That's interesting. I think it can. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff I don't know, and I may be putting things together that, who knows. Okay. But so the myoclonic seizures were, every time I would try to fall asleep, my body would jerk. And then I would just jerk in the middle of the night. Like I was always jerking. And I never had in my whole life. Yes. And it was definitely part of the medication withdrawal. I'm 100% positive that added to that because I had never had that before. And I was going through so much stuff and felt so like bad. But could it have been like the other stuff also? I don't know. Because once that went through my system, well, it did take a while. That's true. It did take a while for those to go away. It did take a while. Right. But
I'll just add briefly to that, Michelle, if I may, that they're also called, I think, hypnagogic jerks, and I had them when I had POTS. Some nights I'd have them like, I remember one very bad night, I had 50 in a row, and I just like, am I ever gonna? Possibly.
Wow, really?
Yeah, I had 50 in a row in very short time, and I was then, of course, scared of even trying to go asleep because if this is going to happen,
too.
Yeah, it's like you die.
You can't sleep, you can't eat, you can't walk, you can't.
Sort of across the board issues, really, and for
that. Wow, really? I didn't know that POTS people had that.
Yes, well, I've talked to others with POTS who've had it, and I think there's a limbic system connection to hypnagogic jerks, and they're terrifying because for a split second you feel like you've died, don't you? Because you
what?
That you feel like you died for a split second. I don't know what it's like to die, obviously, weird. But you lose consciousness in this way, and then you jerk back, and it's very
yes. And I found out what that whole thing is because I listened to like a brain person on YouTube, and I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, that's amazing. But the relationship between sleep and that, like why when you're falling asleep and yes. And but you probably know all about that. But so yeah, I have a question. Did you take benzos?
No, I never took benzos. I did take some beta blockers briefly, but not benzos.
Wow, that's wow. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, that was a lovely, delightful time. I thought I was going to die. I think actually I always tell my husband, I went through so much that I'm not scared to die anymore.
Yes.
Because if I had to live like that, I would rather die.
Yeah.
And that's a big statement. Mm-hmm. And I don't say that lightly, but there's no way you could have any quality of life and live what I was going through. Like, that is not, and that's scary because I mean, I believe in God, I believe in faith, I believe, in miracles, I believe in all the good stuff, but I also believe that it's not a perfect world, and I would not want to live like that. Yes. So, yeah, that was, then I started developing severe food intolerance and severe food, stuff. And something that I forgot to mention was I was also very tired a lot. But I would be okay kind of when I woke. I never felt fresh. I felt like I still needed more sleep, actually. I do remember that. But I'd be okay for a few hours, but by 3 o'clock, I was so tired. And I had been like that for years. I was just like, I'm just no good after 3 o'clock, Yeah. And it's not like that for me at all anymore. Like, oh my gosh. So I know that everything you're saying, I believe that it's limbic system. It's that limbic controls everything. So, excuse me, my kidneys started to hurt a lot. Okay. So I decided that I was gonna like clean out my body from the benzos, because I didn't know anything about POTS yet. Yeah. And so I decided I wanted to clean out, and I decided to go on like a vegan diet, like be strict and get everything cleaned out, And while I was doing this, between the first warehouse and the second warehouse, I was scuba diving, and I got certified to scuba dive because I love being, active. Yes. And I love being in the water and science and everything. And I noticed towards the end of kind of like after my cat, or during my cat, or maybe after my cat passed away, I don't remember, but around that time of that stress, I was getting out of the water. This is before benzos. I was getting out of the water, and I had that blank, that tunnel vision. And prior to that, I had been at the gym, and I was getting out of the pool, and the same thing happened. And that time I collapsed, but I didn't pass out, but I couldn't use any of my body. My arms went numb. My whole body felt like tingly everywhere, and I had to be laid down. They gave me orange juice, and for like 45 minutes, I literally just could not see people. I was like, I'm talking to you, I'm about to go, I'm hanging on, and I never did pass out. But those two incidences, I noticed a change with my exercise, I guess you could say, tolerance. But I still ran, I could still run a straight, thing. But I couldn't stand as long, and I noticed that getting out of pool, probably because I don't know if it like sucks all the like blood down to your legs or something. I don't know what the process is of getting out of water, but water was really hard for me. And I couldn't swim like I used to. Like, I couldn't do as many laps without feeling like my vision was like weird. And I felt like I had to eat tons of food. Like, I was thinking blood sugar or something, and I did have like problems with blood sugar. I would have to eat every few hours, and that was happening. Like, things were starting to become more symptoms. Yes. So back to the latter part. After the benzos, I got off the benzos. 4.5 months of really bad, very bad. Like, I basically was isolated because I couldn't be normal. I was just trying to cope. And then the food stuff became very chronic. Like, I got down to 5 foods that I could eat only. And I was thinking, like, the foods, I thought that's why my heart, like, I'm allergic, like nuts. And I have a stepmom, and she's on all kinds of heart stuff, and she can't eat anything, and she's allergic to everything. And we had like a kind of a bonding moment. And I just was like, wow, this is what she goes through. This is horrible, And then I thought that I thought that beta blocker, I was like, God, really? If it really gets that bad, I guess, wow, people have to go on that. All these things that I was hearing from the doctor and the medical community, and anxiety pills. And so I just stayed on this. I was like, well, I'm not just going to be vegan. I'm going to go raw.
Right.
And I went raw, and it was like really great for the first month. Well, it was hard. The first 2 weeks, I felt really tired and really exhausted. Then like right after the 2 weeks, I started kind of feeling good, and like all the pain in my spine went away, and all my joint pain went away. Even the heart palpitations went away.
Okay.
But then they came back. And a couple of months, about 3 months later, I had to get off of that diet because I found out I couldn't eat spinach. I couldn't eat, I have like all the foods here I couldn't eat, but I couldn't eat anything. I could only eat boiled turkey. I could only eat lettuce, blueberries, and lemon juice and honey for dressing, a little salt, and yellow squash. Right. Everything else, I was itching like crazy.
Okay.
And I had rashes and welts on my skin. My eyes got real puffy. Yes. And I was itching everywhere. I would itch on I itched on my end of my knuckle. Like there's nothing even there. It's just bone. It was just itching. I was like, why am I itching? I'm like, so itchy. And I was like, so itchy. And like my face was itching like so bad. And so then I learned about oxalates, and I went into that face group, group, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like, these are all the things I can't eat. I can't eat beans. I can't eat this. I can't eat that. Well, as a vegan, you're going to die if you try to stay on that diet. And then, and you hear all the philosophies of everybody in there, and God bless them, because they only know what papers and doctors tell them, Yeah. I was right where they were. I knew I had mast cell disorder. I was like, obviously, if I can't eat and I'm getting reactions when I eat, my hands would wake up crunched like this, and this would just pop. And I was like, and then when I didn't eat those foods and I just would eat those 5 foods, I was okay. But you can't eat 5 foods for your whole life,
No.
So, and I got down. Of course, I lost a lot of weight, and now. You can't sleep. You're afraid to sleep. Exactly what you said. You're afraid to sleep. You're afraid to put food in your mouth. Yes. My startle response was off the chain. Yeah. I mean, I would cry when my husband closed the refrigerator. Right. I mean, try living with that. Yes. Poor guy,
Yes, I
was like, don't close the refrigerator so you know how sensitive I am. Poor thing. God bless him 100 times over. He's such a sweetheart. Yeah. I mean, he just was like, I'm so sorry, And then I just tried to stay positive, and I would just, Joel Osteen right through it, like, oh, I'm going to get better, Yeah. And I did. I stayed really positive, and I knew it would pass. But the pot stuff, I started getting heavy in my legs, and now the runs in my heart were now like 5 runs in a row. And this was happening like on the vegan diet, like at the end, like the 3 months. And I was like, hey, this is weird. So the pop PVCs I didn't feel, now I was feeling runs of it, like do. And then it would happen every 3 days, then every 6 days, and then, 9 days, and then back to 4 days. And then it just started happening like crazy. And I was just like getting these crazy runs. And then, these just, now we know it's adrenaline. I didn't know anything at the time. And I would wake up in the middle of the night from dreams. I couldn't even dream. I would wake up and I would just be like, do. And I was like, okay, I give up. Like, I don't know what's going on. So I was going to go see the hormone specialist. I was going to go. The icing on the cake, not the icing, but the beginning of my healing, I guess you could say, was when I rolled over in my bed and my heart was just like speeding up on its own, like regular beats, like don. And I was like, I didn't even do anything, like. And then I started noticing that when I would go on my own, I would go from sitting to standing. I was so hyper vigilant now with my heart. I had the stethoscope and the band, and I was like listening and taking my numbers down, and like trying to figure out like how often this is happening, and how fast does it go, and what's normal? And so I remember Googling that, like, and I remember testing my husband's heart because he's a martial artist and he was always very healthy. He never did any drugs or anything. And his heart doesn't drink. We don't drink or do anything like that. But he has always been like that. And so I was like, let me, in my mind, let me test a normal person,
Yeah.
And his was like completely like a clock when he would go from sitting to standing, and I was so jealous.
Yes.
And I was like, why? Give me your heart right now. And I was like, so I knew something was wrong, and that scared me, of course. And that's when I found POTS.
Right.
And I was like, and then I was mortified because I was like, I have a disease, and I read about it, and, the things you read about it are not, it does not give you hope at all.
No.
It's just like, I read this word, a form of dysautonomia, and I was like, what in the heck is dysautonomia? That just sounds like something you don't want, Get it away.
Yeah.
And so that's when I started to pay attention to the heart, stuff. And then once I found that, and I told my family, like, I know what I have dysautonomia, I have POTS. They were like, well, POTS? Like, POTS? Telling someone from California you have POTS is just, like, funny, and, it's just, I think people must have thought by now, like, she's psycho crazy. And I don't know if they thought that, but I felt guilty like that. I felt like they must think I have, like, psychosomatic illness, and I knew people were judging me. I felt judged. I felt embarrassed. I felt like, oh, my whole world is coming down. Like, everything that didn't work in my life, this is why, and I must be going crazy, and I'm going to get cancer or something and die. Yeah. And so that's when I stumbled across Katie's video, actually stumbled across hers before I found you. Mm-hmm. And she had talked about my POTS, how I healed my POTS with my functional neurologist. And I was like, I really hadn't heard too much. I think I may have heard that word before, but I just thought it was like somebody for the brain, yeah. Neurology or something, And so I was like, I got to contact her. So I contacted her, and she was real sweet and gave me all the information. And I contacted her doctor, and I found out he moved somewhere else. And then I found out the cost of all of that. And I was like, whoa. Yeah. And I had a big decision. I was like, do I fly there and go get this help? Can I even do that? Like, not lose my company right now? Because, when you have your own business, you're on such a tight, like, economic thread. And my assistant decided, like, to just leave in the middle of all of this. Okay, so like, and right at the end of 4.5 months of withdrawal from Benzo and dealing with all this, she's like, "Oh, P.S. Here's for my 2 weeks. Love you." And I was just like, "Oh, you need to just, can you anything else? Anything else?" And so that was that, and I dealt with that, but I learned about the POTS from her, and then I was like functional neurologist, so I looked for a functional neurologist at the same time as I was looking for the hormone lady. I didn't know which way to go. There was like a functional endocrinologist, I think that's what she called herself, if I'm correct, mm-hmm. Hormones. And then there was the functional neurologist, and I called one, and I visited the functional neurologist, and I don't remember if I had learned about you yet. I'm pretty sure I did. I don't know, but I know around that time, it's kind of hazy, but I went to the, oh yes, I did. So I saw Katie's video, got her doctor's information, found out that the cost was really high, and I'd have to fly there and leave my business. And I was just like, wow. And because I have my own business, I could sleep a lot. And then my husband really had to pick up the slack. Mm-hmm. And then I would do what I had to do, which is make products. And then but leaving and going away for 5 weeks and all the way up to, I think he had moved to Georgia or something, or the Carolinas. And I was just like, wow, this is a big deal. Like, I'm disrupting my whole life to get healed, but I'll do it if I have to, I guess, you know? Yes. And then I bumped into you, and hallelujah. And, you had such a soft accent that I could listen to because my ears were really sensitive. Okay. And you were so kind and so, like, explained everything, and I believed you. Mm-hmm. And you said everything that I was going through. And I was just, and plus you had that POTS word there, which was like, thank God that I found, thank you that I found that, thank God, thank you, thank everybody. And I just listened to you, and you had mentioned the DNRS, and so the DNRS was really foreign to me, but I had already kind of studied like Anthony Robbins, and, you know, I had seen some things like come to pass, you know, and I love Joel Osteen, like I said, and I have a real positive relationship with like Christianity. I don't have like all this like weird stuff where you see like, you know, people get into like weirder stuff. Mine's like real basic, you know. Yeah. And I'm well read. And so I have like peace with all of that, of trying new things, seeing things from different perspectives, being open. Yes. You know, and so DNRS, I will say that I was a little bit like, is this going to be like a chakra thing? Because I am not into that kind of stuff. Like, I am not into like Kundalini, like, I don't want to do that. There's even sects of Christianity that get like into that, and I'm just like, yeah, no. Yeah. So I didn't want that. No offense to anybody watching. I'm not into that. I'm more of a science-based, you know, it's got to make sense, you know, you know, to an extent, you know, I have faith too, but so when I didn't know what DNRS was because no one can talk about it. And so I was like, what is it, DNRS? I was like looking it up, you know, and I think I saw like, it's so funny. I think I saw Linda Green's, you know, thing like later. But so I went to the functional neurologist. Here's how it goes. I see you. You mentioned DNRS. I believe you. I trust you. Yeah. No, hands down. I'm like, I believe this guy. This guy's credible. He's not selling anything. He's wrote a book. He's gave the book away practically. Like, this is a true blue guy right here. And plus, Americans love accents. And I could listen to all of your stuff. I was just like, oh, this is perfect. You know, it was just so soft on my ears. Thank you. And then you know, your story with your mom touched me a lot. And I knew, you know, I understood. And so I put that in my back pocket. And then I went to go see the functional neurologist. And when I went to go see the functional neurologist, they did all these really interesting tests. He had a really cool office. And but there was one thing that happened there that, well, yeah, I'll tell you that in a minute. But so I went there. They laid me down on the table. I told him, listen, I think I have dysautonomia POTS. I think I have allergies to oxalates. Do you know anything about oxalates? He's like, yeah, I know about oxalates. And then he wrote oxalates and he spelled it wrong. And I was like, okay, that does not give me confidence. Yeah. I mean, I'm no genius, and I get it. That's a weird word. But if you just said you knew about it, you didn't even spell it right. And I corrected him too. I was like, it's, you know, and he's like, oh, and I was like, oh, this is not good. But he worked with a lot of like sports stars and, you know, athletes and stuff, which kind of rang true to me, that I'm sure he helped people with injuries. I don't doubt that he, you know, helps people. And they did like really interesting stuff where you have to put on these glasses, and you might know about this already, but for any of your listeners, they put the glasses on and you do like these tests. And I got real dizzy with the one that went like this, and I was okay with some of the other, and they put you on stuff to check your balance. And I'm really athletic. And so I did struggle a little bit more than, you know, I wasn't perfect, you know, and that was like bothersome, you know, because I think I would have been 2 years ago, you know. Yeah. And he told me, oh, you know, he showed me like a regular graph of normal whatever brain, you know, stuff. related to the eyes and vision and how your body works and balance and, you know. And he showed me mine, and mine was like off in this one little area, not much. And he said that he felt that I had I said, well, what is that from? You know, of course, I want to know. And he said, oh, you probably have a lesion on your brain. And I was like, and he asked me if I had ever had any concussions. And I said, well, yeah, actually I did. I had a wakeboard accident, and I got a really bad concussion and thought I broke my neck, but I didn't. And I didn't go to a doctor or anything, couldn't see from here out. So that's another lovely trauma. Yes. And so that was basically, I was told, you know, that he could do all this great stuff and I could come and do all this, like, I don't know if it's limbic system training. I don't know what it just was, like all these different things that you would, like lights, and you would like push lights and, you know, do stuff. And I knew that that would probably be helpful because I knew that I got very dizzy. I got dizzy a little bit and I couldn't read, which was really hard for me. And I also lost my words, vocabulary words. Like when I would try to say something, you can see I'm not ever at a loss for words. And I would forget like vocabulary words. So I definitely had some type of I think I had brain damage. And I was not able to express myself in, you know, talking to my assistant or even to my husband. I would like forget the word I wanted to say, you know. Not a lot, but enough that I was like, wow, that has never happened to me before. And I was taking an aromatherapy course, and thank God it was all video, like most of it, because reading was like painful for my brain. I remember reading and I was just like, wow, I almost felt like throwing up, you know, like I just made me feel so bad. I couldn't drive. Street lights and driving made me feel really bad. I remember that. And yeah, there's probably thousands of other things that I've forgotten. But so he offered me this help, you know, which I thought might help all those things, you know. Yes. And I had noticed one day I'm sorry, I'm jumping around so much. There's just so much to remember. But I remember when I was there, he asked me if I smoked, or there was a question, do you smoke? And I had told him the truth, that when I was younger, I told him, you know, I had done recreational drugs, but I was really, you know, quite young. Yes. And, you know, partied, whatever. And then when he asked me on the thing if I smoked, I think that put a question in his brain, like, was I a druggie? I felt like that a little bit, because he wrote, says she doesn't smoke. Okay. And I was like, I don't know if I was being sensitive to that. Like, no, I don't smoke, you know? Yeah. And so I didn't, that kind of put me off, you know, to him. And I kind of felt like he didn't answer some of my questions directly. And I think he lacked a lot of information when it came to POTS. But I think he had a lot of confidence in like some of the other stuff, you know, like his little tests and me being able to not get dizzy. And I don't, you know, I believe that there are so many probably different things that I don't know, that, you know, I hear different types of training systems now, and, you know, I don't know what he did, but I believe that it might have helped a little. I don't think it would have solved what I have, but it could have. Who knows? I never did it. Yeah. So it was very expensive, and I left, and they charged me for stuff that I didn't do. So I was a little put off. So I was like, you know, I prayed a lot about it. I talked to a friend of mine that's a pastor. It's been a friend of mine for a long, long time. And I really needed to have peace about what I chose. And I was like in between functional neurology, functional endocrinology, where they put you on a special diet and they check your hormones and, you know, all of that, and DNRS. And I was like, I had such a peace that came over me when it came to DNRS. And it was affordable. I saw people with testimonials that I believed. I didn't think anybody was, you know, faking it or anything. And so I waited a month after I watched your video, and I really like stewed about it. I prayed about it a lot. And my husband asked, and it was like, you know, money in another direction. And we didn't have a lot of money. We were, you know, with our business and everything, we were fine. We were taken care of and everything, but, you know, we have our budget. And he's asked me, I remember him asking me, do you really think this is going to be it? And it was kind of like, I kind of felt like he was saying, you're probably not, you're probably crazy, you're probably, I know he didn't think that, but I know he kind of was like, you really think this program is going to, like, do that? Like, kind of like, don't you go to a doctor, And I was like, I have. And they're all, let me find the nicest way to say it, but I do not have confidence in the medical field. I just don't. Unless you have a brain tumor or you have a broken leg or you need special stuff, I just don't have a lot of confidence in them, except for the ones that are learning, and that really are open to stuff, And, I just haven't had a good experience with doctors. They're disrespectful to you when you have questions. I felt like I was treated like I was crazy when I went. And I would know more about the subject than they did, and that did not give me confidence, And so I told him, I remember telling him, I don't know if DNRS will work. I may be a fool, but I'm willing to be a fool for $250, and I would really like for it to be true.
Yes.
And I said, and I'm really just betting, I'm hoping, I have hope. And I bought it a month later after really thinking about it, because I was losing sleep for 4 days. I felt like I was ready to have a nervous breakdown. Like, I knew I was, because you cannot go 4 days without sleep. Like, you are not a normal human being.
Yes.
I would look at my husband sleeping like a kitten, and I just hated him. I was just like, oh, you bastard, like, how do you, and he is the sweetest person in the world, but I was so envious of his sleep. Like, how can someone just put their sleep, he doesn't even think, he just,
Yes.
And here I am, like, up at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning. I was like, with now the fast, beats and the rushing, and it got to the point where I just got so used to it. And, yeah, there were so many stories I could tell you, of things that happened when I went to go visit that pastor, and I had an episode there, and it was really embarrassing, and it happened in the middle of the night, and I didn't know what to eat. I couldn't eat. I didn't, know anything about DNRS yet, and it would just happen in the middle of the night. I couldn't breathe. I was like, I just got to figure it out. I mean, it was really stumping, mind stumping. So then I did find out about DNRS, and that's where the second, I mean, so I found DNRS. I didn't buy the video yet, or did I? I think I did buy the video, and I saw Linda Green's story.
Yes.
And when I saw her story, I had been so frustrated with not eating all the foods I love. My mom is Spanish and Italian, and I love beans, and I love burritos, and, and all that stuff. And I couldn't eat it. And I remember seeing her story, and she literally had everything I had. Plus, she had the electromagnetic sensitivities, which that to me at first I was like, uh-oh, are we dealing with crazy people, Yeah. But I actually remember having that with cell phones like many years ago. So I was like, wow, that's kind of, I think that's a real thing. Yeah. And she had everything else I had, so I just went with that. Mm-hmm. And when she showed the pictures of her where she looked like she was just almost, you could see she didn't want to live. She looked terrible. And then you see her telling her story, how much weight she lost. And, you see those pictures. I was like, well, I'm not that bad. I'm bad, but if she can do it, yeah. I know I can do it. I went out that day before I even started the program, I think, and went out and ate a burrito. And that was like a big deal for me, because it was, I guess, like, it's wheat, and beans and tomatoes and green peppers. God forbid a green pepper, a nightshade. Oh my gosh, yes. And from there, I was able to kind of eat some foods again. I still had the PDCs and the PACs and stuff like that, but everything just got so much better. And I was real serious about the training. Yes. I didn't go into an in-person. I just did the DVDs, and I sat right over there and I watched them, and I did everything she said, and I really liked her. I didn't feel that she made my uncomfortabilities for my faith. There wasn't anything, I just saw it as very freeing, very beautiful, and you know, I'll leave it at that because that's like their program. But it was beautiful. I liked it. It resonated with me, and I welcomed it. You know, I welcomed the change. I swallowed it. You know, I swallowed it hook, line, and sinker because it had to work. I mean, my options were so so limited and didn't really. It's so funny when I listen to all the people that told me, all the doctors that told me how they were going to help me. Like, I think like, wow, all that money I would have spent, you know, and I don't think any of that would have helped. I mean, it wouldn't have, because putting someone on drugs, I'm super sensitive to antibiotics. I'm very sensitive to, I've always been like that. I've always been really sensitive. And so for me, going on medication and stuff, that just was, you know, I wasn't comfortable with that because I knew how it affected me. And that wasn't something I was looking forward to. So I would say like DNRS to me, I felt like it matched my issue. And then I started learning, when I saw the brain that rewires itself and I saw that lady put that thing in her mouth and she was like flopper or something or whatever they called her, like she couldn't stand up.
Yes. I
believed. I was like, oh, thank you. I was like, we can do anything. I was like, woohoo! I was like, if those people can get better from the brain, and you saw the guy with the arm, and I was just so fascinated with the science of it all, and I was just like, this is amazing. This is wow, our brain is so beautiful. For me, it brought me even closer to God because I felt like I felt like it's so much larger than we can imagine. There's so much more that we don't know. But I feel like, but he knows, you know, he made it. So that's the way I feel. I know everybody has their own thing, and that's cool. But for me, it worked. I loved it. I embraced it, and I'm very fascinated with the science of it because I think that when you get stuck in a rut or you get stuck and your limbic system gets stuck like that, I think I had all of the things that people said I had. Like, I think I had, what's the one where you get very tired and your adrenal fatigue? Yeah. Like, I mean, I was a textbook for that, you know? And I did all the things I could do to get better with that, and it did not work. Yeah. I mean, I did the herbs, I did the right eating, and I'm a kick-ass disciplined person when I need to be. Even though I'm creative and kind of all over the place, you know, too, I know how to, you know, and I did, and it didn't work. And DNRS worked. Yeah. And I remember you saying in your video, and I remember you saying this, you said, it's so simple, and that's the simplicity of it. It's so simple, and it seems like, how can this possibly work? Yeah. And yet, it does. And
well, it speaks in the language of the limbic system, which is a simple beast, and that's why it's clever. It's clever, you know. It's there's nothing sort of, you know, like you're not reciting mathematical formulas or something. The limbic system wouldn't care less about that. But, right. Yeah, but it gives the limbic system.
It's like talking. It's like, yeah, like talking to like a 4-year-old. It's like the most amazing thing. Like, yes, it's amazing. And I read about the mammalian brain or whatever it was. It's like something brain, like your basic brain or something. And even though I'm not a big evolution, you know, person, I do believe in like adaptation and stuff. I just think that it works. Like whatever your angle is, it works. And it's incredibly fascinating. And I loved what you wrote about the mitochondria, and the net deficiency, and I thought that was really amazing. And I also read the book Spark. My coach ended up being Linda Green. It's so funny how it is. And anyway, she had suggested the book Spark, and it's all about the mitochondria. And I don't know, just so fascinating. So that's my story. I'm sure there are lots of points I left out, but I shared quite a bit. So if you have any questions, you're welcome to ask me.
Well, Michelle, you shared that most beautifully and very, very thoroughly. And the one thing I think would be interesting to ask you would be, in terms of your process of recovery using the DNRS, can you talk about how your symptoms alleviated, kind of which ones went away first, and how things kind of unraveled in terms of actually improving in your physical health?
Yeah, that's the best. That's a great way to get great segue. So the first thing that I noticed was I had hope. And hope is cool because hope brightens your face. Hope makes the people around you not petrified. Hope, when you have that strength, I feel like when I had that strength, it just lit up the room, again. And that was really important because that's the kind of person that I am. I'm a sunny, I love people, I love life, I love to give other people hope, And here, the little hope maker was down, I was like, no hope. And so my hope came back. And with that came, the first thing that I noticed was the foods. I was able to eat like without fear, which was big. I think that's huge. I made peace with not getting sleep right away. I was just like, I'm just going to make peace with it. I don't sleep, figure it out in the morning, have a little extra hours. And I made peace with it. I was able to make peace with it and go gentle on myself. And so the food was the first thing I noticed. My startle response, that took some little time, but I noticed that when you don't even know when stuff goes away, it just goes away, and you're like, you're still waiting for the other stuff. You don't even remember. You're just you're driven for perfection. You just want to be normal again, Yeah. So half of the stuff that fell away, I didn't even realize until months later. I was like, oh my gosh, you know what? The train's going by out back, and I'm not jumping out of my skin. Right. My husband can close the refrigerator, and stuff that annoys him doesn't even annoy me. I'm like, oh, it's just a really loud noise, but it would bother him and it wouldn't bother me. And I was like, this is so awesome. Yeah. So I noticed that my blurry vision kind of had cleared up prior to me being on a DNRS, but sometimes it would come back. Okay. And with the training, that went away. So the little bouts of that, foggy thinking I had a lot. Yeah. That went away. Once in a while, a few maybe months ago, I had a little bit of it, and I don't feel like I really ever get that. Not even around my cycle, which for women is a big deal, Yeah. So yeah, so that went away. What else did I have? The pain in my joints went away a lot. I only have a certain amount. Once in a while, I'll get this weird thing in my joints right here. This when I wake up. Okay. I'm still training, so I still have some maybe foods or something, or stress. It seems like stress. Yes. Makes me have food symptoms. I know it's not crazy, but that's the only thing I can put together because I've eaten those foods before, and then all of a sudden I'll eat them, and then I'm not sure what's going on there, but most of my symptoms are all gone, except for a few. Oh, a big one! I can exercise like a beast. I mean, I can exercise. I run. I can run 3.5, 4 miles. I can swim a half a mile or quarter or half a mile. I don't feel overwhelmed. I can drive. I can process and read, and yes. I remember I used to listen to this apologetics speaker who is he's very educated, he's very intelligent, and he's not the easiest for many people. And I love listening to apologetics, especially Christian apologetics, people that are intelligent, that really know their stuff. And his name is Ravi Zachariah. Mm-hmm. And I was not able to like touch any of that kind of heavy stuff because it like, hurt my brain so much. And I remember one day going jogging, and I was able to hear his, you know, his speaking and his, you know, the things that he shares, and they're complicated because you have to track with him, you know. And I remember that was a big deal because I could not listen to anything. I couldn't even listen to like Foo Fighters or music, or I had to listen to, like, I had to be really, you know, very low on the, you know, fight or flight stuff. The fight or flight stuff, I that went away. Once in a while, I get a little bit of it.
Yes.
If I get under stress.
Yes. Because
I'm still I'm not fully, you know, 100%. I'd say I'm 90%.
Okay. Yes.
And
in terms, Michelle, of the flight or fight stuff, by that you mean a sense of kind of, you know, stress hormones being released, basically. That would be how you describe that. Yeah. Yeah,
I had big bad runs of just super fast adrenaline surges that would happen in the middle of the night. And they would happen in the middle of the day, and they would happen in the morning. And when I would wake up in the morning, my heart would just be all over the place. I would just be still. I wasn't even moving.
Yes.
So, yeah. So, like, all that fight or flight, adrenaline surges, I had that for a while. That was one of the things that really was like, man, when is this going to go away? That finally went away after 6 months. I'm not sure exactly where. Mm-hmm. So very recently.
Yes.
And then I noticed if I get stressed, sometimes they'll come back. A little bit before I was going to do the interview, I was like going back over like my stuff, and I got a couple of runs, you know, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I was like, okay, I just have to train more. So yeah, so the fight or flight stuff went away. The pain went away. I'm still dealing with, like, my hair is shedding, falling out, whatever.
Okay.
And also, I was having what I thought every month were hormone like stuff that was making me nauseous and really bad headaches and feel like off, and all of that went away.
Great.
That was like a big miracle for me because I thought I was going through perimenopause because my cycle was changing. It was changing, and I'm 46, so it could be changing anyway. But so whatever was, you know, going on with the whole hormone, you know, if that was it, through DNRS, I was really surprised about this because I would feel so nauseous sometimes. That's all gone. Right. And I also, it's just amazing. Yeah. So the food allergies, the food intolerance, the POTS, that's a big one. We're having a POTS interview. I don't have that anymore.
Yes. So what would be your standing heart rate now, typically, Michelle? Just because that helps people to know that kind of thing.
72.
Wow.
But my regular heart is 60.
Great.
So I have like what they call bradycardia, which I call athletic heart.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. Let's totally go
you
with
call whatever
heart.
You want, but I'm athletic heart.
Yeah.
And so
And what was it? What was it? Yeah, before. Yeah.
So before, what I remember was like, you know, 60 was my 58, 60 when I was, you know, just getting up in the morning or whatever. And then it would go up to like 92. And then I think a couple of times it went to like 120. And when I went to go see the functional neurologist, I called them yesterday to see like what it was. And he had written down, well, I didn't speak to him. I just spoke to the girl in the front. And she said that he said you have dysautonomia, POTS-like symptoms, so that was that. And then my sitting supine or whatever, my laying down heart rate to my standing was like from I think it was was like 60 something to like close to 90 or something like that. So it was just a little bit over at that time. Yeah. Throughout my, and I remember my legs getting real heavy.
Yes.
One leg.
Right.
My left leg, when I was away at the pastor's house and not knowing anything about, I didn't know about POTS. I didn't know anything about that. Yeah. And I remember I told my husband, I was like, my legs feel like I have cement in them, like really heavy. It's the weirdest feeling. Yeah. And I didn't only learned about that recently, that was a POTS symptom.
Yeah, very scary.
So I didn't, that was really strange. And what was really strange too was that the racing heart would last for a long time, like a long time, like minutes and minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, that full on like release of that. And I don't know what that does to your body, but I know it's probably not good. And so all of that went away. I don't have that anymore. Sometimes like yesterday I had like 5 or 9 back-to-back heartbeats, and that is very rare. And I think that was just an anticipation of probably just me speaking with you. Yes. And maybe going over all the stuff.
Well, you have to also bear in mind that there's also a normal flight or fight response, which we have when stressful events are coming up, or, and that's part of being human. So there's that, and then the difference between that and when it's happening 24/7.
But is it normal to have like 9 beats in a row of your heart palping like that?
No, it wouldn't be. But just to say that, in some cases, someone might feel anxious or whatever. But it depends on the context. That it can be. There's appropriate anxiety. Is my point.
Right. You're not going to be like a superhuman. I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like 2013, that's when I noticed like the pain, and then it kind of like 2008, the darkening. 2013, a lot of pain, yes. A lot more pain in my thing. Then it started getting into like a little bit of food stuff, then the heart racing, then the POTS, and then food allergies, and then just the whole host of all that, coming to fruition. And you had said something also that I think it's so important. It's not just POTS. Yes. It's everything associated that controls the limbic system. I feel like it was like my kidneys, I felt like it was my stomach. I had very bad stomach pains. So I thought I had what's the one when you're the stuff in your stomach, like food gets through? What do you call that? Like when you eat, people have it. It's like very common. It's a gut issue.
Where it gets stuck, is it? Like gastroparesis?
No, like not that kind of stuck, but like like there's a problem with people's stomach. It's very common now when they eat food, their food is permeable and it goes into their bloodstream, and they get like sick.
Leaky gut, is it, or
leaky gut?
Yeah,
I definitely had that.
Yes.
I'm sure. I mean, I had everything.
Yes.
I mean, every single thing was yeah.
Well, that's it, because the limbic system affects all these different parts of us, and the thing about a POTS diagnosis is people will think, oh, I'm only sick when I stand up, or something like that. But, it's not true. You're sick all the time. It's just a bit worse when you stand. But it's global, and it's everything, and it just happens for various reasons also to affect the blood vessels when you stand.
Yes, yeah. And the book Spark, and did you ever read the book Spark?
No, I haven't read the book Spark.
It's kind of cool, too. It talks a lot about some of the stuff you touch on. The reason it's hard for some people like me to swim and stuff was because the mitochondria weren't built up in my arms also at all.
Okay.
And so I could run, but I couldn't swim. And then I couldn't even run because I came home one day and my one pupil was big and one pupil was small. That's when I really knew. I was like, that's very strange. And I felt really nauseous and really sick, and that's when I was like, I had to stop exercising and I had to do the DNRS, and I got more kind of like trying to exercise and trying to train and trying to build back up again, but also be very easy while I'm healing, So
absolutely.
You said it. You said it. It affects it affects everything: your heartbeat, your lungs, your endocrine system, your cells, your white. I just think it has to do with everything.
Well, absolutely it does, and as a society, we're just blind to this, constant signal that the primitive brain, is sending to everything.
Yeah.
And it's part of, and that's why for all of these limbic system conditions, the DNRS uses that phrase, the canaries in the coal mine, and I think we everyone who has a limbic system impairment is actually, although people might say, oh well, they're the crazies or whatever, but actually they're just indicating how powerful the brain is for overall health, and it's just not understood properly yet. And one day, hopefully, it will be.
You guys are so far ahead of your time. you know, and I include myself in it because I believe it. You know, I think that we are all so far ahead of our time, and the fact that there's not a lot of people clicking on these kind of videos shows us how far ahead we are.
Right.
And it's something that needs to go forward. Man, if more doctors knew about this, think about how many of their patients they could help. And how many people would be off of all these medications that don't work, that eventually cause worse symptoms. You know, I'm sure you know about, you know, the benzo receptors and what they do and how you have them in every part of your body, including your stomach, your heart, your lung. I mean, they're affecting all of that. So a person like you and I, who's already got something going on, you're literally throwing a wrench inside someone's, you know, wheel. Like, it is just, yeah, but it's very exciting that you guys are doing it, that you're doing this book, and that you're doing your second book, right?
Yeah, well, hopefully, once we get enough stories together, it would be wonderful to put them out there and you know, give hope from that human side and gather case studies, because that really matters in terms of getting you know, getting evidence that this works. And so, Michelle, the last question I would ask you is, you know, cast your mind back to when you were really sick, and knowing that there'll be people now watching us who have we gone?
What? No,
we're not. We're there. Just the picture broke up a second. Anyway, just say
Oh yeah, you've been frozen the whole time. I've never seen you move.
Okay, there you are. Well, I will unfreeze myself now, and I'll ask that again. So, as a final question for you, Michelle, if you can cast your mind back to when you were sick, and now bearing in mind the people who are watching this, many of them will be sick with POTS, what would be your main counsel to them? What would be your, you know, depths of advice from your experience, and what would you say to them?
Well, I mean, the obvious is please try DNRS before you get on any medications. If you've been diagnosed with anxiety, that's kind of like everybody that walks into a doctor's office now. It's like the candy doctor. I mean, they just give this stuff out. And I mean, they didn't even, I mean, I could have been a drug addict. They didn't even ask me. I mean, you can even ask a person, but I mean, I just feel like they give that stuff out too easily. So my advice would be, if you have a diagnosis of like chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, multiple chemical sensitivity, for sure POTS, you know, and anxiety, and, you know, even people that are struggling with like Lyme, you know, I just think that your system can get so stuck in trauma that your poor body is saying run, 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 run. And my advice would be to really understand that, I mean, first of all, I'm not the type of person that would say something works that doesn't. I have nothing to gain at all. And it worked for me. And I could have lost my business. I could have lost my marriage, maybe. Who knows? You know, I think so much is at stake. And for the little bit of money that it costs to take a program like this, you owe it to yourself, and just do it. And the cool thing is you don't have to believe it for it to work. If you just do it, it doesn't matter what your background is, you know, it will work if you do it.
Yes.
And so my advice is I would say absolutely get on with DNRS, and you'd be so surprised. And then the second thing I would say is kill the negativity around you. You know, people will call you overly sensitive, tell you that you need to be more positive, you know, kind of put that positive thinking thing on you. And it can be very isolating. It can be very frustrating. It can feel so lonely. And it can feel like you're going through this all alone and by yourself. And you're not. There is a whole support system out there of people that are just like you and I, that had POTS and had multiple things going on in their system, and this is such a neat thing because it costs very little and it works. It worked for me. And it's worked for people that are much worse than me. People that are in wheelchairs, oxygen tanks, and they look like Holocaust victims. You know, they're people that are really, really suffering, you know, and I suffered too. So you don't have to suffer alone. The limbic system is a fascinating study, and if you're contemplating suicide, that's a very real part of this. Do not make a permanent solution to a temporary problem. This will pass. I know it's hard to believe, and you might be stuck in it. You might be withdrawing off benzos. I don't know, because I know these doctors give out so much medication. You will get through it. Stay positive. Try to surround yourself with good people, and you know, stay strong. Reach out. Don't stay alone. And I would just say, you know, please give this program. I did the DNRS. Please give this program a chance. And if there are other ones out there that are limbic, you know, I don't know. I didn't do them, but it works. I can't, you know, no matter what your background is. I mean, I'm Christian. I was a little bit worried about, you know, certain, you know, Eastern philosophies, maybe we are God kind of thing, you know. But it's really not like that at all. And just keep an open mind, because you owe it to yourself. You owe it to your life, to the people around you, and to the future you that you may not even know yet exists. There is hope. You will heal. There's light at the end of the dark tunnel. And being healed feels amazing. You will do so many other things in your life so much better. And the one thing I will say is, in a way, and I know Patrick probably knows exactly what I'm talking about, in a way it's a gift, because I understand now how to create a more healthy environment for myself. I understand how to have better self-care. And I understand just more about how my body and my brain and my emotions are important, how all of that fits together. And so I'm a better person for it. I have way more compassion for people going through it. And I would have never said that at the beginning going through it. I was always like, yeah, no, I'm not glad that it happened, and I'm still not glad that it happened. But I can just say that I am a better person from it. And you know, I don't know if it will heal every single solitary ailment out there, but I definitely know that it's helped me a lot. And I'm able to do my life and be happy and take, you know, trips with my husband, and, you know, do fun things, exciting things, and plan my future and my life, and to live the best life that I know how to live, you know, with the happiest spirit and the most joy. And, you know, life is not perfect, but you deserve to have your share of the happiness and the joy that comes with this imperfect life.
Yes, that's beautifully put, Michelle, and very inspiringly put. And I just want to say from my part how beautifully I think you've shared your story, and also it's special for me because you're the first person I have interviewed who reached out to me from reading the book and also contacting the YouTube channel. So it's lovely for that to come round full circle in that way. It means a lot to me, and also I just think it's wonderful because, as you said, at that point when, you know, life was really hard and dark, you felt that the hope maker was down and that she wasn't able to give that hope anymore. But, you know, today you've been able to give that hope again, and that's a special moment to be part of. So I just want to thank you again, Michelle, for really sharing your story and spending this time with me today.
And thank you, because if it wasn't for your video, I would not have found DNRS. So I have a lot of thanks to you. So thank you so very much for sharing your story and allowing me to, you know, be a part of it. It's great.